As an 8-year-old child, I was given an old porcelain doll by a very dear family friend, Miss Marion. She was always coming across things and giving them to me. This doll was the last thing she ever did give to me though. I was never really into dolls at all growing up, but I took the doll and placed her in my room in a small child-sized rocking chair. The doll sat next to my closet and dresser, right beside my nightlight. The doll was very pretty. She was dressed in peach and cream colored dress with an apron and petticoats. She had little black Mary Jane shoes that when removed showed her delicately painted toenails. Her body was soft. Only her head, forearms, hands, and legs from the knee down were porcelain. Her limbs were pink. Her dark brown hair hung in slightly frizzed and now loose curls. Her eyes were brown. Her cheeks were a rosy peach color, all like mine. Miss Marion made a point of saying the doll reminded her of me, which is why she gave her to me. From the moment that doll, I named her Claire, came into my house, things began to happen. I was always uneasy with Claire. I never wanted to touch her, and when I played in my room, it was as if she watched me. It wasn't anything to panic about, but I do remember feeling like if I did something wrong, she might actually tell on me. How ridiculous does that sound? The first real occurrence I remember was when I was reading in my room, ghost stories if you can believe that, when a musical carousel horse that sat on my dresser began to play. Not just a couple of notes, like an old mechanical music box will do at times, but like someone just wound it up fully and let it go. I sat stunned and stared at the little horse, and it moved up and down in time with the music. Then, it just stopped. Not wound down or anything, but just suddenly stopped. I was a pretty brave kid. I didn't run and I didn't tell my mom. I used to see a shadow man in the hallway or in my parents' bedroom door all my growing up years, and if she didn't believe me about that, she definitely wouldn't believe me about any mundane thing such as a music box playing on its own. So I just let it go. The next thing that happened was the voice. For several nights and into these years, I was awoken by what sounded like a woman inches from my face shouting my name. I jump and sit up and find my room empty. Those happenings died down after a few months though. She then started to plague my little brother with the same thing, and now that he and I are grown up and gone, she's moved on to my dad. The little thing started to get to me. I'd put something in a certain place only to find it later on the floor or on my dresser, right next to Claire. All my missing items eventually turned up around her. Once a ring ended up in a pocket of her apron. Books would fall off my shelves and a perfume smell would sometimes fill my room. The doll itself didn't smell at all, but the air around her would. My catalyst to finally get Claire out of my room was the night that I woke up after hearing thumping around my closet. I opened my eyes, sat up in bed, and of course my eyes were drawn to the nightlight where Claire sat. As I watched, the source of thumping became clear. The rocking chair Claire occupied was rocking on its own. I had thick shag carpet, so there is no way it was rocking just by chance. If that wasn't enough, Claire's feet, which were both turned to the side facing opposite each other, slowly straightened themselves to both be pointing directly up. This part still freaks me out 20 years later. She then turned her head, which was quite impossible to do since it was attached fixed to her clothed body. She looked towards me, and every music box in the room, all 4 of them, started to play at once. I was frozen with fear. I didn't feel endangered so much as I felt scared of what was happening. I screamed for my mom and dad. The music stopped, but Claire maintained her gaze in my direction. And this is why I hate dolls. Even after that, I couldn't get rid of Claire totally. I ended up stuffing her in a box in the back of a storage closet. She's still there as far as I know. So is the woman who now screams my dad's name in the middle of the night, and not in a kinky way, while I think she explained some of the oddities that happened in my parents' house, I don't think she is the tie to it all, especially with the Shadow Man. My friend Tim Weisberg is a paranormal radio podcast host of the show Spooky South Coast. and also an author. He asked me to lend him Claire once. He heard my story back in 2011. I obliged, and Claire went to stay with him for a few months. He wrote about his experiences with Claire while she stayed with him in the book Haunted Objects that I mentioned earlier. Temperature changes in the room she stayed in, along with hearing voices, were two of his note encounters. Claire also stayed briefly at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in 2012. The guys from the Haunted Towns show encountered some things in my parents' house while Claire was with them. She now lives at my friend's old haunted house. He is a Haungan, so he and his love, along with house's other spirits, tend to keep her in line. My daughter has several old porcelain dolls. When she was 9, she got a sudden interest in them. I had never bought them for her because they are very often very delicate and I didn't want her to break them. I took her to the Goodwill and she begged for one. I let her buy it since she takes care of her things good, so why not? I quickly noticed something was different in my house. I felt like I was being watched from every corner. Shortly after that, she asked for another doll at the Goodwill. Over the years, she has collected 3. I noticed she was very careful about which one she picked. She treats the dolls like gold and keeps them sitting up on the corner of her bed. She tells me the dolls like me since I'm so careful with them when I move them or make her bed. I see shadows around my house and I hear soft voices. Nothing makes me feel in danger and I'm getting used to it, but it's just freaky. None of this stuff really started until after these dolls came in the house though, and that's why I do think that they do have spirits inside of them or something like that. Any thoughts would be very much appreciated. I know this is really weird, but I've always been obsessed with the idea of having a haunted item. So I went on eBay and did a very thorough search on trusted sellers and stores where I could buy haunted items. I eventually settled on my doll Evelyn, because the seller stated that the vessel was inhabited by the spirit, Evelyn, who died at 17 and had hopes of going to college and being a teacher. I felt a connection to her, because I am currently a senior at university and about to start working as an English teacher. I hope to read to Evelyn often and ask her advice for my lesson plans. I even am interested about giving her a place in the classroom to sit so she can still achieve her dreams. So after the first day and night with Evelyn, I only have a couple out of ordinary things to report. First, my cat won't stop rubbing against the doll or sniffing it. And second, I fell asleep last night with my TV on watching South Park on Hulu, which means my DVD player was on too. I woke up at about 1 a.m. to both of those things being shut off. Now I know there's probably a logical explanation for that, but I'm just hoping it's her. On my second day and night, nothing happened last night that I know of, but I woke up at 2 a.m. for no reason, but that's becoming typical for me anyway. But today, as I was getting ready for class, I turned on a paranormal story time on YouTube, and right after, my door that had been shut opened by itself about a quarter of the way. My cat and I both shot our heads up to the door when it happened. When I know, I will probably sound dumb for this, but I used the Ghost Radar app and it said there was an entity right in the direction where my door is. Now, this doesn't prove Evelyn is a haunted doll, but I do think there's something off about her.